Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Shooting Rabbits in a Barrel, a podcast brought to you by Scarecrow Consultants. We're joined today by a new guest star, Ivan. Welcome. Welcome to Shooting Rabbits.
Good morning, Jess.
Morning. Thanks so much for
I do
joining
feel
us.
exactly like a rabbit in the headlights right now with this big white background and everything.
Oh,
Target.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. We're very friendly here. Okay, so to refresh, we have just had a summer break, so I'm having to even refresh myself what questions we ask. So for our listeners, to remind you, we asked 2 questions on shooting rabbits. What story would you like to share with us today? And what valuable lesson did you learn? So, Ivan, welcome. What story would you like to share with us today?
I'm going to share a story that goes back 42 years. Okay. So I think, imagine the young 18-year-old Mactaggart. I joined the army as an apprentice at 16, so I'm not new anymore. I think I was characterised as class 2 at the time. And I was let loose on Her Then Majesty's main battle tanks as somebody to repair and look after them. I think it was my first ever major job on my own, unsupervised. So you can kind of see where this might go. A young 18-year-old out, the German sun, this is Germany, the sun's up. It's a late evening. This was going to be a late evening job. Everybody else had gone home except for me and the driver, who was going to operate a crane for me, and me and a toolbox and a £3 million, I think it was then, Chieftain main battle tank.
Wow.
Is where we are. That's the scene, if you like.
It has been set.
Yeah, that's where we are. So if you can picture that, it's big green thing with barrel on it, guns over the side. I've taken the decks up. I've lifted off the T piece of armour on top that you have to unbolt, and I'd unbolted that. And I had the crane over the side and the sling, and it was on an auxiliary generator. There are two engines on those main battle tanks. Most main battle tanks have 2 engines. You have the main engine that drives and powers it all, and then you have an auxiliary engine that typically drives a generator that charges all the battery systems. You think of a car with a single 12-volt battery in there. Main battle tanks have about 8 of these things, and they're twice the size of a car one. And it has 8, some powering the turret, and about another 4 powering the automotive systems. So I'm going to be removing this engine, and we connected up. You put the sling on first. I had the manual. Absolutely made sure I had the manual. I was given the manual. I was told this is the one you need to follow. Here's the instructions. So imagine a Haynes manual, only about 15 times thicker. It's like a huge wedge. The manuals alone for these things are like about 15 volumes back then. And remember, this is all before sort of laptops, and it's all before even microfiche. So these are printed books. So I've got this massive book, and I've got it open. And, my first job, I am going to follow this. I'm going to stick to the process. Absolutely going to stick to the process. And I did. We started, checked everything. The first job is, before you even put the sling on, is to lift up the main engine radiators. They sort of fold down and lie over the top of the engine, And these things are probably about 3 foot high and about 6 inches thick. They're big, lumpy radiators. There's a lot of metals to cool in there. And so I've lifted that up, swung it up, we've got things down, and I'm working away. And as I said, really important, this bit, I followed the process absolutely to the T, every nut and bolt. And then I'm ready, and I'm moving the thing around, I'm ready to lift. So I start instructing the driver who's going to operate the crane for me. Right, okay, up in and out. It's like a crane with 2 sort of arms, where you've got an inner boom and an outer boom, and you kind of have to go up inner and outer to keep it straight as you're coming up. And as I'm moving it up, things are going quite well, and I'm jumping a bit here. That's a major job. I'm living my dream, I think.
Living your best life.
Yeah, my best life. This 18-year-old fixing Panzers in Germany, and as it comes up, I know that I've got to change the angle of the sling, so I gently move it down to the angle away, and then it says, right, this moment, as it clears the main engine's fuel injection pump. So this is a big diesel engine on the main engine. And the fuel pump is like massive. It's got 24 injectors. There's 2 injectors per cylinder on this thing. They're massive beasts. They're hundreds and hundreds of horsepower, and very expensive. And we're going good. And I thought, right, as we clear the main fuel pump, I should be able to just lift this now. So I said, yeah, that's it. It's clear up. And then it all went wrong. The world closed in on me. The sun was out, but it went dark. And what had happened is we'd had a big snap, big bang. The engine swung back straight into the radiator. There are now hundreds of litres of gallons of water now flowing over into the tank, all over me, coolant. There's hydraulic oil going everywhere. And as I said, I just sort of want to close and hide somewhere, because someone's going to want to have a word with me about this. And we stop, right, let's look in what happened. There was something that hadn't been disconnected on the bottom, and there was something on the end of the engine, on the end of the generator, that shouldn't have been there. It wasn't in the book. So I'm not going back now, we're trying to get as much what we call cotton waste back in those days. This was all before your health, a lot of the health and safety regimes and the control of oil spillages and things like that. But there's a lot of this, so I'm going to mop it up somehow. So we're piling cotton waste, getting drip trays under the tank, because we've got what's called a belly plate. We can disconnect the drive in underneath, that's open. So this is going all over the floor. Today this would be a bit of an environmental disaster, quite frankly. And I'm in the middle of clearing up. Anyway, we stop. We get it cleared up as much as we can. The engine's still tilting, half in the engine radiator and half out. And I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, that shouldn't be there. That's not in the book. That bit on the end is not in the book. That pipe hose under there, that's not in the book. And then realization comes in. Been given the wrong book. I've been given the manual for a previous variant. And everything is the same except for this thing on the end, which I found out later was a battery heater. Right, so this thing, a battery heater, and the pipe that was underneath it was an air vent pipe that came into that battery heater to help the battery heater vent hot air when it was being used. And these weren't on an earlier variant. I had no way of knowing what variant this was. It's the first time I'd seen it. It's the first time I was taking this engine out. Previously, when I've been in training, which was the only other time I'd taken this engine out, it was in training, because we were a group of us all doing a little bit of the jigsaw, and it wasn't this variant. And I thought, well, I was just sitting there thinking, oh dear, I am in so much trouble. I did go in, and it was, better explain yourself, young lad.
Yeah.
And I explained, and I said, but I followed the process. I absolutely did. There's nothing I didn't do. And the driver was backing up. He said, he read every single line. He said he was getting a bit cheesed off with me, because he was saying it's taking too long, and it was because I was reading everything. I thought, got to get this right. Anyway, so it all goes wrong. I go in, and it turns out that I was given the wrong book. No negligence on my part. Negligence on part of my my sergeant, who should have actually overseen the job as well, and didn't. He just cleared off home, and should have realised that I was unfamiliar with his variant. Anyway, so I Mactaggart is off the hook, ish, and I say ish because guess what? He's now got a really annoyed sergeant with him, so who I've got to sit on his crew. So you don't get away with this. And I think, and bear in mind, this would have been 1983 probably, around that time. The damage was around 350,000 pounds worth of damage rectifying. So that's what went wrong. I say it's horribly wrong. But there's a moral to this. There's a moral to this, I think, for systems engineering. Because you're going to ask me now, what was the lesson I learned?
Yeah.
The lesson you learn is there are a number, actually. There are 2. Check, and check. Make sure you've absolutely got absolutely everything that's right for what you're doing, what you're working. Also, don't get so head down. Every now and again, step back and have a look around what you're doing. And for a systems engineer, that's really important. You know, we get immersed in stuff as systems engineers, and we've got to sometimes detach ourselves and actually do the system view. And it is a system view. A lot of people say, yeah, you've got to step back and take that helicopter view. Well, taking a helicopter view only gives you one aspect. That's the above aspect, you know, it's a top-down view. You got to look around the whole. If I'd taken just a step back and had a look around that, I wouldn't have seen what was underneath. I needed to get around all of it and have a look. So that's one. Before you execute the final move, take a step. If I'd had a look before I went pull it up, that wouldn't have happened. So that's a lesson learned. Disengage, have a look, confirm you're on the right track. Second is, following the process alone doesn't get you there. And that's another really good lesson for a systems engineer, I think. I think one of my fears about where systems engineering appears to be going or evolving is we're becoming very process centric. We're being very, very centric around the systems engineering handbook, ISO 15288, all the processes, follow the process. Well, not necessarily. Processes need adaptation to the environment you're in. Can't blanket the process, as I found out that day. Processor wasn't wrong. The process had admitted what I needed. Process wasn't wrong though, but following it didn't help. So I think, you know, they're the two things that really come out for it to me, and they still resonate today. Earlier this week, I was given the final plan for a phase of work that we're doing on a digital transformation project, and I was looking through it, and it's one of those moments where not quite right here, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So you get the team together and we go, right, I just want to challenge our plan here. You know, I see all the bits here and everything, but there's something bugging me and I don't want it. So let's challenge it. Let's look at it. And sure enough, there was an issue in there, and it was that we were putting our document controllers. We're going to put our document controllers under huge pressure at a time when they would be subject to more movement of information than at any time we've had in the last 6 months. The wrong time to increase their workload to cover this transformation time. Came back out by getting us as a team to stand back and have a look and like, let's just challenge ourselves before we execute it. Let's just game it through. And that came out yesterday morning. So we've now got a bit of a rethink. So they're lessons that have stood with me. There are lessons that I still know. I still recall it. I still recall the look on Taff Barnett's face. He was a sergeant when I had to go and tell him. And I still recall the military humour in the 80s. I mean, most people probably from films that see a bit about military humour, but back in the early 80s, military humour was ruthless. It was ruthless. I was ribbed for months. You know, you get tank commanders come on past me and go, "Don't go anywhere near my tank, Mactaggart." Things like that. You know, it was all down to those, you know, take his toolbox off him, you know, that kind of thing. So,
oh my goodness.
I think the term they used back then was character building. You know, we might look at it in a different light these days, but it was good. So, you know, yeah, I think that's the lesson for, I think, is, you know, always, even when you think all you've got to do is follow the book, stand back and have a look around you. Stand back, have a look. You know, it is always just before you hit that final thing, just go and have a look. Disengage yourself from your system. And is it the right thing? There you go. That's the story, and that's the lesson learned.
Oh my goodness, the bottom of my stomach fell out. I was there with you.
It was, and I'd like to say that was the last major mistake I ever made, but of course it isn't, is it? You know.
Oh no,
there were other
another
ones
podcast
along
for
the
those. Yeah, I'm interested. If I could, this is maybe a bit of a nosy follow-up question, but okay, so we've also recorded one of these, and it was somebody in their early career talking about a mistake they made, and it was software based. They'd made a mistake in doors. When you said about the price tag on your mistake, and I'm just thinking now, and I'm thinking about what you're working in now, and it's you're not working on machines necessarily, you're at the design and definition stages.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about the difference in like price tag. And okay, what can we say now? Maybe people aren't making mistakes like, there's a massive snap and there's fluid everywhere.
Yeah.
But have you seen, actually, well, you already nearly answered it. These lessons are applicable in even where there's not a big piece of hardware for you to break.
Yeah,
not
everywhere.
Not where there's just
Yeah.
Also where there's just a button wrong to press. You can still cause a lot of money's worth of damage in the way of engineering that we're doing now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I recall working in a business in one of my teams, and it was around doors as well. Actually, funnily enough, you say it. And it was a case of an individual, a brilliant individual, fantastic individual in one of my teams. And I'm not going to name or anything. They're not long retired. Some listeners might work out who it is. Most won't, fortunately. And 2 screens, 1 keyboard, 2 different systems. A lot of pressure coming in. Hit a key, but he wasn't on the screen he thought he was. And we had a loss of data indoors, and we lost, I think, about half a day's work on a major program. Significant amounts of time, money, and it involved me having to have a call with an incredibly senior person in the organisation. And what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, we've done everything. This was a human error, absolute human error. Well, who was it? Well, it's a human error, and they didn't need to know any more than that, and they didn't. And that the funny thing about this particular story is that the who did it never ever got out until the day he retired. Till the day he retired, and then he fessed up. By then, I'd long left the company. But he and I were to that day the only people that ever knew about that.
Yeah.
And I think, why is that important? Because I think as you find yourself going through your career, and if you find yourself as leaders of people, your job is there to put an umbrella around them, put a bit of protection around them, look after them, and accept a couple of things. We are going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. When we kicked off the project that I'm leading on now in East West Rail, we kicked that off. I was very clear with the team. I said, mistakes, it's inevitable. We're trying to do things faster than we really would like to. We don't know everything that we're going into. There's going to be some emergence out of this. So we're going to make mistakes. What we want to try and do is, and I think I phrased it in terms of, we're going to be juggling a lot of balls here. Some are glass and some are rubber. We need to keep hold of the glass ones. They're the ones we need to identify. And if we need to drop a ball, let's try and make a conscious decision to drop it. Sometimes it won't be our call, but if it is, let's make sure it's one of the rubber ones, not a glass one. But equally, you've got to make sure that the rubber one doesn't bounce back up and hit a glass one. So that
you're in the face.
We're going to get things wrong. I think that's the point. We define ourselves not by all of our successes. I don't think. I mean, people kind of do. Sports people particularly, perhaps. But I think we really define ourselves by how we handle what goes wrong, and as leaders, how we handle what goes wrong when our teams goes wrong in our teams, and how you handle that with them. I think that's so. There's a lot of lessons I think you pick out of that. But things, if it can go wrong, it will.
Very well. Yeah. Well, I feel quite uplifted after that. This has been a roller coaster. I've gone from oh no to oh no. I have hope. I have, you know, the leadership that's going on and the lessons learned that you learned in your early career have clearly impacted how you now lead. And I think this has been very lovely. Thank you so much, Ivan, for sharing all of those
brilliant.
lessons.
Thank you so much for asking me along. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Anytime. Well, listeners, if you'd also like to come and share your story on shooting rabbits, you can get in touch with us at rabbit@scarecrowconsultants.co.uk, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks for joining us.